Hey everybody, we're live, and I'm actually putting out a notification that we're live on the Facebook group called Lake Neighbors, and with my longtime friend and mentor
called Lake Neighbors, and with my longtime friend
Steve Lowe. And Steve, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Zenny.
And Steve is a landscape architect, urban space, who, when I first met Steve, was, and I guess technically still is, an advocate for the Oakland Farmers Market. Remember that?
Well, the produce market, actually. The produce market's down there in Jack London Square area. And we had this dream that was shared by one of your bosses, John Williams, to bring it back to life as a retail market, sort of like Pike Place Market in Seattle. And the Ferry Building roll hadn't happened yet, so it was the perfect place for it. But John unfortunately died, and we went into a different realm. And
hey, can you tell who John Williams was? He was our redevelopment agency director, but
yeah, I think he was the first black redevelopment head in the United States.
Yep.
And a very highly regarded guy, and just a wonderful visionary. And so he had carved out of this new downtown plan a little area that was historic because it was all built out in 1880, and started drawing a line around it. So when we came to him with this idea of creating Old Oakland, he was all for it and said, "You guys, I just want to see you go forward." But of course, back then, this is almost 50 years ago, a sentence of, or a diagnosis, I should say, of liver cancer. I think that's what he had. It was some organ, was a death sentence. And so within 6 months, he was just gone. And I don't want to get into the politics of the time, but our relationship with the city began to crumble, and we weren't able to bring our project to fruition the way we wanted to.
That was what we did with the historic, right?
Yeah, we were then looking at 6 square blocks from 10th Street down to 7th, from 7th over to Clay, and then back, which would embrace the Swans Market. And so we were really excited about it. But of course, and within that, we were going to bring Berkeley Rep to Oakland. They were going to change their name to East Bay Rep or something like that. And but it just all kind of fell apart because the political will wasn't there. And when you don't have a political champion, stuff just doesn't get done on time or with the elan that we wanted to bring to that part of town. So
you can always say you established Old Oakland.
Yeah, well, that's what happened, but it was a shrunk down Old Oakland. It should have been those 6 blocks, and really a great place, sort of like Old Sacramento, only less maybe commercial than that activity is up there. But anyway, that was years and years and years ago. And so in the process of going through that,
I think we met in 88, right? I believe we originally met in 1988 when you were over with the Storks over at Old Oakland. I was an intern with the Oakland Redevelopment Agency, and remember Glenn Isaacson?
Yes.
Yeah, he had this big model of what is now almost fully built out city center.
Yes. Yeah.
And he had this big gathering. I think we met in there, somewhere in that area.
We may have the time I remember you most was going to the old city court building, and there was a meeting in their boardroom or something upstairs, and you had a mustache and were seemed very critical of the meeting, and rightly so, because I thought that they were discussing something that had nothing to do with what Oakland's real potential was.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Now you're reminding me. I was rather hopping mad then.
Yeah.
That was what year was that? That was
I don't know. I was living in the produce market at that time with my second wife, and we had concocted this scheme of thinking that the produce market could become a regional.
93.
Okay. Wow.
93. Yeah, I believe 93, because I remember, 93, because the city court building was finished in 81. And then I went away to college and came back. And I considered it a monstrosity when it was built, and I made a drawing of it because I was so pissed off that I thought it was kind of like a phallic symbol on the lake. You know? And and came back, and who was it that had that meeting? Whoever it was, when I went to it. Yeah, I remember being almost like, I feel like a fly in the ointment or something. I didn't mean to. It's just.
Wasn't there a group called New Oakland Now or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah. New Oakland something. Yeah. And but then I remember you had this, when I started working for Elihu, we really got to know each other.
Yeah.
And that's when you had the big dream about the Oakland market. And also we knew this guy that ran the Oakland Gorilla. Remember the Gorilla?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Unfortunately, actually committed suicide. Because you and I met before I started working for Elihu, but he committed suicide in 94 because I was writing for the Montclarian around that time. And
you're not talking about the guy that tried to open Jack's. There's Max, Jack's, and some other thing down at So he across from where Yoshi's is now.
Yeah. He had Max Sports Bar, and I was actually the Dallas Cowboys, San Francisco 49ers 1994 NFC Championship game came on NFL Network last Saturday, and I happened to be watching it with Mom, and I was saying, hey, when I watched that, I was at Max Sports Bar that Sunday morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, Sunday afternoon, like about 1 o'clock, you know, And that place was packed. You know how we get. And that was the place a bachelor went to meet his potential wife. Didn't happen for me, but interestingly. But a lot of water under the bridge. Now we come to the Bay Conservation and Development Commission and Howard Terminal. And you've been involved in the formation of the Howard Terminal Community Benefits list, for want of a better term, or plan. And you sent a letter that I'm going to read right now. We're talking about this letter prior to tomorrow morning's meeting at 9 o'clock. Are you going to the meeting? You're going to be there in person?
I won't be there in person, but I'll be there both in spirit and in Zoom.
Yeah. I'm going to be there in Zoom. Yeah, I'm going to.
Okay.
Then I've got. So anyway, you write here. Hi, BCDC commissioners and staff. While many believe that baseball and or retail uses near the Port of Oakland benefit special interests only, those of us who support the Oakland A's proposal do so because, like no other project presented, our waterfront can at long last be transformed into the necessary environmental paradigm that its surrounding community has long sought. Folks from other parts of the Bay may dislike various aspects of the development, but they most likely don't have to experience every day the corrosive effects of this obviously ill-used, neglected, and disadvantageously underdeveloped super regional hub. In order to guarantee that ballpark and village access will significantly improve both commerce and livability through Oakland's strategically situated waterfront, the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, EIFD, through which a substantial bulk of essential cargo must also flow, the beating heart of Bay Area commercial, and a good way to capture that unsecured property, or what others would call possessory interest property, but I digress, cannot but be built out as the most efficient transportation hub in Northern California, providing simultaneously a fix for any of this nation's regional supply chain deficiencies, and also a major contribution to the Bay Area's increasingly imperiled environment. We have a chance to strengthen our regional economy by reinforcing the efficiency of Oakland's waterfront and at the same time intensifying the Bay's holistic approach to remedying its ecology. Cordially, Steve Lowe, Transportation Co-Chair, Howard Terminal's CBA Steering Committee, Vice President, West Oakland Commerce Association, Vice President, Jack London District Association, Board Member, Oakland Airport, Old Oakland Neighbors, a co-founder of 1973 Old Oakland Project, coordinator, and as well as I forgot what WOJULO stands for.
It's West Oakland, Old Oakland, Jack London. And we've got 8 different community groups in all that area to join together to try to get a better alignment of what the community wants in this area, rather than the kind of pop-up groups that are always last minute coming to the table and saying, we demand this and this isn't what the community wants and blah, blah. In the community groups, and you've known a lot of the people that have been in these community groups all their lives.
Yep.
So I just felt that this was a good time to do this, because we've had iteration after iteration of a community-wide organization that for one reason or another has not been able to affect its vision. And mostly I'm thinking of the project area committee that redevelopment established there during Nancy Nadel's term.
Council member, yeah.
And that was, to me, West Oakland speaking as in one voice. There's a lot of disagreement, of course, but it's the kind of Congress of West Oakland we used to have, and trying to drag Old Oakland and Jack London into that. So in the meantime, though, because of this community benefits agreement process, the Howard Terminal Community Benefits Agreement, or CTA, or CBA, right, had to have Chinatown added into it, which is great, because these are the 4 most impacted neighborhoods surrounding the ballpark, and what is really surrounding the ballpark is the little redevelopment-like district, the tax increment district that you've been talking about for a long time, which here they call the EIDF, Economic Development Funding District. And to me, that is the most significant development that Oakland could come to, because whether the ballpark flies or not, this has to be so well coordinated to handle the transportation, which sits right in the most crowded corridor in the Bay Area, that it cannot but help push the port in the direction of modernization and make it a model for supply chain fix and all the rest of the stuff that needs to happen down on our waterfront and has been delayed from doing so for 30 years or more. And so it's time now to do this because we don't have any more time given the world's environmental problems. And we just got to build our way out of this, and the Bay Area can do this by, using the ballpark project as one of several in this enhanced infrastructure development area, so that we can say, here's a way to make sure that all the containers that are coming out of the port do so fluidly and are not hung up in some kind of congested nightmare on 880 or however that's going to look. So that's my real support for that. And I believe that most of the others in our community benefits agreement group, the Howard Terminal CBA, I think they're in favor of that too, but some of them are kind of more focused on housing and others are more focused on education and stuff. I don't think the overall transportation vision has quite resonated with all of us just yet. But let's see how that happens if BCDC tomorrow says we're going to give our proposal, our approval of this, because after that, then we have to go to the State Lands Commission and then the City Council, who has one or two members, I think, that are not happy with the A's deal. We'll want to stall this even further.
Hey, I got to ask you two things. What do you expect to happen tomorrow? Because me, I would be surprised if it's not a clean vote, because the last time we were in this situation, the BCDC more than telegraphed its dislike for the Warriors Arena at Pier 32. But for Mark Benioff, the Warriors still would have been in Oakland. This seems different, The staff is recommending the project, essentially.
Yeah.
I don't see anything standing in our way.
Well, there's the Longshore Union apparently has agreed with the Pacific Maritime Union, or what is that group there that
Pacific, I had Mike Jacob on Monday.
Yeah.
Pacific Merchants Association.
Yes. And so I love Mike and would love to
Mike's a great guy.
sit down with him one of these days and explain why he's dead wrong. But it's
if you don't know Oakland, we're all family. We all we argue all the time, and we all then break bread, or I have this man buy me a great dinner at Lake Chalet. That was a lot of fun.
I think Mike's position and the position of the Longshore is not unreasonable. I mean, they're sitting there saying, my God, the port's making a colossal mistake. But I don't think they're seeing the other side of this, and that is that this forces the port into modernizing itself to the point where, back in the day when the Longshore said, we don't like container shipping because it means the end of all these longshore jobs down in San Francisco, and we all said, no, this modernization is coming. And Harry, what's his name? Forgetting his name now. The head of the Longshore said, Harry Bridges said, you know what? You can't stop progress. What you can do is orchestrate it so that it happens to the benefit of everybody. And so that's why the Longshore has all the jobs that it has now. To go to the next level and say, okay, how can we make sure that the entire region is going to develop to its highest and best technological advantage, and make sure that the Longshore is part of that development is the trick for us. But, this is why we've been saying for years, we need a regional port authority, just like Seattle has a regional port authority, and New York, New Jersey has one. Why is it that Oakland has fought off this idea for so long? Because that's how you can find the dollars and stuff that you need to do this modernization. So I think that's something that's going to have to happen.
That we all thought, that's, by the way, Mike Jacobs' outfit, Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, PMSA. But may I remind you of the fear that we had that basically that regional government would basically wind up being a seat for the Ayatollah, as we called him, of the Assembly, Willie Brown, and King of the Bay Area. And so that was,
but that was because
later became mayor. So under that,
Yeah, but I think people just were terrified that Willie Brown was either corrupt or too black or too much of a lawyer. I don't know what it was, but the guy was a visionary, and nobody loves anybody for 100%. So there were things about Willie that I could say I wasn't crazy about, but his vision for the Bay Area as a more functional community beyond just San Francisco and beyond Oakland, but the entire Bay Area, which is in itself a giant metropolis. If you think in terms of regional governance throughout California or even throughout the world, it's always been the regional economy that has competed with other regional economies and driven the national economy.
I want to say
the Bay Area is called the strongest regional economy in the world.
Mm-hmm. Hey, let me add something about Willie before we go too far away from him talking about this. I've always admired Willie. In fact, I got a plan to get him on here soon, and perhaps you'd like to join us. But I digress. My issue was never Willie Brown, and I don't think Willie was. I never heard Willie described as too black. I don't think that was it. Willie, from my perspective, had an idea to make San Francisco #1 at a time when Warren Chip Brown, publisher of the Hills newspaper group, Elihu, a number of people really focused on, if you like, stealing some thunder from San Francisco. Remember, they had Cirque du Soleil, and we stole Cirque du Soleil from and all that sort of thing, and it was a nice little economic competition. My opposition to anything Willie Brown wanted to do began and ended with how I felt Oakland would be forced to take a back seat to what San Francisco wanted, because Willie understood better than anybody else how to pull the levers of government to get things going. That's why we have, if you think about it, the Salesforce Transit Center. That was Willie Brown. That's his legacy, among other things. So I want to get that out there. I love and respect Willie Brown. Learned a great deal from him from a distance. Got a tongue lashing from him once when I was going over to check on something for Elihu. And that was funny. No, that's not how you do it. Anyway, and so no, nothing but love and respect. I just want that on the record.
Great. But I think that, if you look at New York, New Jersey Port Authority, right? It's the two of them together. And so to have the San Francisco Bay Area Port Authority, which would have to have its world headquarters here in Oakland, because this is where all the port activity takes place, unless you think Richmond or Sacramento or something like that would be a better location for that. So the center of all port activity would remain here, but the ability to build out those other aspects of Bay Area maritime activity would come through that authority and would have a better coordinated Bay Area in terms of shipping. And the other side of it, which is marketing. Who's marketing what Northern California has to all these other ports around the world? I don't know who it is. It sure ain't Oakland. And it needs to be that way, I think, which is why I always thought that Jose Dueñas's idea and Elwood's of the World Trade Center was something that we could build here in Oakland.
He passed away a little bit ago, didn't he?
Boy, I think Jose's been gone for 3 years or maybe even more.
Yeah.
But
Jose Dueñas, folks, was the executive director of the World Trade Center in Oakland. And remember Nova Sayers worked for him? That was a long time ago. I haven't seen Nova since, wow.
Yeah.
But,
that's the potential, the hidden potential I think that Oakland has, is to become this kind of world blue collar brother to San Francisco, the one that gets the work done.
mm-hmm.
We just have to see it. Well, what would Athens have been without Piraeus there as its port? Athens became the most dominant city and culture in the world at one point because it was essentially a port. But they built all the shining, glittery stuff up there on the Acropolis, and meanwhile, all these guys were down there at the port hauling in goodies and being involved in world trade. And of course, it's that trade that contributes so much to liberalism, because you've got to make concessions and be more tolerant of other people's stuff if you're going to be able to trade with them.
Yep.
And that's what Oakland is to me, but I just don't see these interest groups that are saying, well, gee whiz, this guy's a billionaire, so we can't accept that he's going to do the right thing. Well, he's a commercial goofus, and we're all going to have to depend on that as part of the deal.
I got to ask you, and I think it is in the spirit of the fact that we are on the eve of a meeting before a deliberative body.
Yes.
Wouldn't Howard Terminal's progress and organization have been better served if we just followed SB 293 Skinner, where its version of enhanced industrial financing district law called for the establishment of a district board, or what is normally called a public financing authority, and then the formation of infrastructure financing plans so we could plan for how to spend the billions of dollars in tax increment revenue? Wouldn't we have been better off? Because I say that not just for those reasons, but because it would have installed a regular process of meetings per month so that the public could track it, so that everything would be under a sunshine provision, right?
Yeah.
And you could really see where we were, where we're supposed to go. You could have a place to come up and lodge complaints, present business ideas if you wished. That's the way I even did it when I was trying to bring Super Bowl to Oakland. I created the Oakland Alameda County Sports Commission.
Right.
Right. Same thing. Monthly meetings, deliberative body. I asked Sanjeev Honda to be our watchdog so that I could have Sanjeev pissing out of the tent instead of pissing in. Sanjeev, he'll rest in peace how he was.
Yeah.
I love that guy. And so my point is, this time when you go and look at the update for Howard Terminal on the city website, the last date that I saw was February 25th of this year.
Yeah.
That's absolutely crazy. This is now we're going into the 30th of June, and we don't have a regular update system. We don't have a sunshine friendly process. We don't have a process that aligns what we do. We don't know where we're at. We don't know who's done what. I find that really bothersome.
For me, because I spent so much time with the Community Advisory Committee in redevelopment,
Mhm.
saw how that worked. This West Oakland Congress we talked about, or Congress-like, and a little less corrupt than the Congress we have in the United States today. It seems to me that we could use that paradigm and say we want to make sure that there's a project area committee to be that advisory, because if we don't have it, then we can start seeing special interests coming in and eroding the vision.
Kind of like now.
Yeah, and so that I think we can restore, but we'll need to identify a champion on city council that can make that happen.
Well, how about just following the law? Because my fear is we start getting down the pipe where money starts to form, which should have happened 3 years ago. We could easily get sued for just simply not following a process that's been laid out by Governor Newsom and actually by Governor Brown when he signed SB 293, SB 628 Beal in the law in 2015, right? That was the father of all enhanced infrastructure financing district legislation.
Mm-hmm.
My fear is that we could easily get sued just by not following it, because there's no deliberative body to say that we are following it. Right now we have the mayor saying it, and then these meetings like BCDC become, I think, bigger events than they should be thought of, because if we had the process that every other city that's done this in California has, the meetings would be the focus, right?
Yes.
You would have this, special meeting and all this stuff. The meetings would be the focus, and everybody would know where we are.
Yeah.
I find it really, and I'm going to ask the mayor about this tomorrow when I have her on at 3:00. I find it really uncomfortable where we're at. BCDC or no? I mean, there's going to be a BCDC positive vote, but
yeah,
I can't.
I hope so. There's been a lot of prediction that would happen, and I kind of think that Zach, who's been part of the port for a long time, and at Wendell Rosen been helping to direct the city's vision for better governance, will be a force in helping this BCDC decision happen tomorrow.
Have you talked to Zach about this?
I haven't talked with him for a long time, but I've known Zach for years and years. As a matter of fact, the first tenant in Old Oakland, first office tenant, was Goldfarb and Lippman, and Zach was just coming on as a partner back then. And
we used to call him Zach of Potatoes. Remember that?
Well, I don't remember that, but that sounds pretty good. But he's always been a good guy, and trying to do the right thing, I think. And but here we are. As much as I like Libby, and I like her a lot, she was her first job in Oakland, I think, was helping us orchestrate this wonderful night under the stars we had for the opening of Old Oakland.
Yeah.
Which is followed 3 days later by an earthquake that happened to just destroy everything we tried to build.
Yep, that was, folks, that was the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake.
Yeah.
That happened October 18th, I think. October 18th during the World Series. First game of the World Series, actually, at 5:04 in the evening. That was a Thursday. Do you remember where you were when that happened?
Yes, I was in a meeting with my partners talking about, why Citicorp was being such a strange and difficult financial partner, and they were all thinking that California was going to drop into the sea because of some magical waves that they were getting back in New York, or I don't know what it was, but they were very difficult to deal with. But anyway, the earthquake happened, and we had just opened, I think only 3 or 4 weeks earlier, Pacific Coast Brewery.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a great place. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
right underneath our conference room.
Still open, right? Coast Brew Pub. Still
Yeah.
open. Yeah.
First brew pub in Oakland. And so we all went down there because it was the only place that had power and their TV set was working. So instead of watching the World Series or anything like that, we were all watching the results of this earthquake and that part of the Bay Bridge that had dropped down and people trying to drive over it anyway.
While you were down there, I was headed to meet my client. Remember John Sharon? Attorney of Stoops, Sharon, and Harburger. They had their offices on Grand Avenue.
No.
Just like a tick down from the Golden Bear. And we used to call the Golden Bear. I was to meet him because what happened was that John and his dad wanted to build a market hall style building and business out of the old Tia Maria on the corner of Staten and Grand Avenue. And so they hired me to do the market study for them, where I projected they can make roughly, I think, $4.7 million a year.
Uh-huh.
And so we were supposed to meet down there. And I was headed to BART because I was actually working on getting ready for the meeting. And BART had closed. So I thought, I'll take the bus. And I caught the 51. And at that time, I remember walking down the street and there was a guy walking toward me. And all of a sudden I saw the sidewalk roll toward me, literally. That's how it looked. And I stopped, and then that guy was approaching me who I met, realized it took us a full 3 minutes to realize that he spoke Spanish and I spoke English, and we didn't understand each other, but we knew something had went down.
Yeah.
So then I got on the 51, and these are the days before cell phones, folks. You have to keep this in mind. It's 89. We didn't have cell phones and the internet active at all. You know, you had to really just sort of guess. And I got on the 51. It was crowded. There was a blind woman with a radio to her ear, and she said, "Oh my God, the Bay Bridge has collapsed. Oh my God, the freeways are collapsing." And I thought, oh no. I mean, that was my vision. So I got off at Broadway and not 7th, where Broadway meets where the old Jay's used to be, which is now Broadway Valdez in that area. And I walked over to the Golden Bear from there, and the place was packed. It was like, somebody had a compress on their forehead. Their car had actually was parked up against the building, but the building bricks had collapsed, and it collapsed onto the car. And I ended up staying there until I think midnight, and I got home by John's secretary, Barbara, who I had this amazing crush on. So I was actually in seventh heaven. But yeah, I remember that like yesterday. Wow, it was a crazy time. So you started to prolong that, but that's what happens. You get a couple of people together in our bracket.
Well,
turning 60 August 4th. So there you go. This is my.
There I was down in this bar, and overhead in my office was Libby.
Mm-hmm.
And have accused her of stealing all my pencils, but she said she was just in there sharpening them.
Yeah,
so
right.
I don't know whom to believe, or if I can even remember anything these days, but she was just the cutest thing, and really super efficient. And somebody whose mind, I think, was really appropriate for being the mayor of the city.
Yeah.
Although I didn't see it then. But anyway, that's long ago and far away. But I think she's been a good mayor on mostly. I think there are areas where things could be improved, but I think that as it comes together, this EIFD area is so key to everything that's happening in the Bay Area in terms of transportation, in terms of port development, in terms of even the economic side of the port, which is its commercial real estate, that's going to be improved by this. It's going to be just the thing that we have to do. And not only do we have to do it, but as I said, the environment is going to be improved by this thing. You cannot develop in California anymore without being so hugely concerned with the betterment of our environment that this project will expand to deal with that.
Hey, I ask you, because you were on the community advisory committee for Howard Terminal, did they ever put a price tag on the plan? I never saw one.
You know, I think that's something that the A's were very confused about, because community benefits are really hard to do that. And of course, all of us, when we started talking about our area of concern, mine was transportation, which I was kind of the co-chair with Mercedes Rodriguez. Do you know her?
I just talked to her last week. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So she's great. And
Awesome.
we thought, well, you know, in order to get all the stuff done that we're going to need to, we're going to also have to deal with land use problems and how to make Broadway more functional, because it's so screwed up now with the blockade at 4th and Broadway, or 5th and Broadway, I should say, where the freeway crosses over and you have to go underneath to the tube, and it's just such a mess there. All that has to be fixed, and there's no way that the A's could do all that. So we began to think in terms of having studies that they would help pay for that could lead to eventually unlocking the economic benefits that are kind of looking to happen.
But that's why I point to just following the process that's laid out in SB 293 Skinner, or even if you want to use some other version of enhanced infrastructure financing district law, it still calls for a public financing authority and an infrastructure financing plan. And so if the public financing authority were so staffed with you and extra seats and other people who represent the community advisory organization, you can simply pour what you all did into the infrastructure financing plan.
Yes.
And then the magic question is, okay, well, how much money do we have to deal with? And if you're looking at a lot of people tied up in acreage, and that's where I feel like a lot of I say a lot of junior journalists covering this make the mistake of paying attention to the map shapes, but they've never done tax increment financing. You realize it's not really the shape of the map, it's the assessed value of the land, because that drives your money, right?
Yeah.
And so what wasn't done was what I laid out to Dave Cavall as the person who basically is the father of public money being involved in this project, because I said to Dave, you could do it. He swore you couldn't. I proved that you could. That was April 4th of 2017, that you could then establish for you guys, guys and gals, a template of monies available, and then figure out, okay, how much do I need? For example, Mike Jacob had a total of basically $1.2 billion in costs laid out over 3 different areas. Well, if you were to assume an assessed value rate of growth of 4%, but let's say that the targeted base year assessed value is, let's say, $3 billion. All right, the ballpark at $1 billion, a little bit north, and then an additional $2 billion in construction around it. That's going to drive a over 45-year period a redevelopment total revenue envelope of about $3 billion. And so, $2.4 billion, which will give you roughly double, just roughly another billion over what you need under that. But then if you parked in the A's version, which is a total bid out of $12 billion, now you're looking at $9.7 billion in tax increment financing revenue bondable. You take half of that, or in other words, your debt coverage ratio is a factor of 2. So you take 50% of that, and you begin to size your bond within that envelope. You say, okay, I can pull out, let's say if it's just the ballpark, and the ballpark plus $1 billion, that's $2 billion. That would get you to $1.6 billion. You say, I'll take $800 million of that. So you can take part of that chunk, 350 million, give that to the A's, but then say, all right, I know that my average rate of growth, the assessed value for Jack London Square, is 6.3% per year. So I'm just playing with 4%. Maybe I'll add 2% or another percentage, and I'll play within that envelope. But I know if I let a bond, that bond I'm not going to go into default, because among other things, the state allows us to increase the assessed value each year by 2%. That's a great thing. They ought to change it to 4%. You know what it is in New York? It's 6%. That's printing money, Steve. 6%, right? So anyway, my point is that you all would know how much money is there and can be doled out, because we have pricing schedules for everything from Head Start programs, a community benefit, to street alignment, a community benefit. You know that what I'm saying, signage, everything else. But to do this and not cost it out, to me, is a damage and an insult to the community, an example of the kind of sloppiness that has been allowed to go on in this project. And I'm happy to be wrong, but I can't see where I've ever been wrong in any turn in this. Can you?
No, I think we just never been to the point where we could really get our arms around the cost, as you say, and getting a more precise vision of what's needed. And I don't know how to get around that, because the community process was never concluded or never allowed to segue into what you're saying, that there needs to be a board or a
public financing
or something like that, where you can start to really define this stuff and say, well, we can't do that this year, so we'll put it off there. Just the kind of management of this vision that we've not been allowed
for a second. All that work goes into the Public Financing Authority's job and the infrastructure financing plan. Okay. And there are other cities in California who've done this. Sacramento's doing it, or has done it as we speak. So they're all like miles, to me, parsecs ahead of us. Yeah. And we're sitting on our hands. So what you all lays out the direction for the Public Financing Authority. All the city council is authorize its creation under SB 293 Skinner. And now see, if their issue is, and I think it is, the A's don't want to pay a property tax, then that's where you need to hardball it, because the property tax is just 1%. All right. If they're too cheap to pay 1%, the A's have to be shown how they're paying 1% property tax is damaging the ability of themselves and the community to gain $9 billion from build out. That would be the A's fault. So this is a scenario. I don't have to embarrass the A's. It's just a fact. It's like, look, why are you leaving our money and yours on the table? You want to be reimbursed, right, for infrastructure that you have to spend as an organization, but yet you're not going to pay a 1% property tax that you can get back through other ancillary development down the road. All right, it's 1%. You know what I mean? It's 1%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 1%, and what's worse is we as a city are letting them, from the way I understand it, get away from this. So I've asked Dave Cavallo this again and again and again. Initially, he didn't answer my question. Finally, he said, we don't have a problem paying a property tax. Great. Because all that says to me is, hey, you know what? Then we have the engine of redevelopment to work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really simple. The trouble is we made it by our indecision, our inaction complicated.
Well, to me, as I said to you earlier this year, we need to have somebody that's the champion of this on council, and that person hasn't been identified. Libby isn't a council member, and she can only come in and tie a vote or whatever she does. And I admire her leadership and ability to push this project to where it is now. But there has to be somebody on council that's going to say, okay, this is how we're doing it. And
what about Chantel? Since she's already pushed for a citywide, enhanced infrastructure financing district.
Yeah, I wish I were 100% behind that, because I think that the enhanced districts have to be be specific.
The law allows you to do
that a little bit, but
the law allows you to do that. You can actually designate the specific areas where the money goes. That's part of your infrastructure financing plan. And I think the problem is that.
But how can it be citywide then?
Say again, please.
How can it be citywide then? I think
there's two different things. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just stick with Howard Terminal.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Right.
And I think that.
Stop right there. Focus on right there. Okay.
Okay.
Just the 55 acres. Forget the acreage. Just say we're going to build 2 billion square feet of development. That's our base year assessed value, right?
Yeah.
Law allows us to take the resultant $800 million in revenue, bondable revenue, and then split it in accordance with the infrastructure financing plan and identify projects of what are called community-wide significance. That means all over, in this instance, the city of Oakland. It could be outside the city, right? The law gives you that much leeway. Okay. So you can have just Howard Terminal and yet still fulfill the off-site infrastructure improvement responsibilities. That's what rankled me about all this talk about, well, they're not dealing with the off-site. I said, wait a minute, just read the law. It's right there in black and white. It's been there since October 11th of 2019. I know it's getting late, so we'll stop soon.
Okay. All I'm saying is, in order to set up a mechanism that can make those decisions, there has to be a champion on city council that's going to do that. It could be any one of a number of people that I think would be good at it.
What about Carol Fife? Since this is her district, but she's not really taking charge. Like she's trying to destroy it.
It seems to me that Carol is really pretty bright. I mean, she was part of our Oakland Works group when we were trying to put that together as part of that Woodschlu thing that I was talking about earlier.
Yep.
But I haven't really felt that she wants to see this project managed the way that we're talking about now, with a setup and a group that meets regularly and that has a community advisory to make sure that it doesn't go off track, all that kind of stuff. And maybe she's changed. We've not been able to have a real meeting with her. It's usually the meetings have been, although Mercedes talks to her a lot, I think, but not really had the kind of direct meeting between the people that were involved in this community benefits agreement directly with her and staff to figure out how to move this forward.
Doesn't it concern you that we don't have on city staff somebody we can turn to, like Henry Gardner, who is responsible for Coliseum? But I'm just saying, a Henry Gardner or an Ezra in the past, or Libby won't let me do it. I'm ready to do it. Right? I was ready to do it years ago. Still am. But my point is that the people who know how to do this we're not getting younger, and the fact of the matter is that the expertise we have, by Libby's own admission in a press conference interview we did last year, we spend a generation getting rid of it because Jerry killed redevelopment, right?
Yeah.
But those of us who have all throughout that never lost sight of the power of tax increment financing, the ability to use it in the way that it was supposed to be used is presented in the guise of this Howard Terminal project, and yet we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And yet you ask, like, for example, Molly Babern said at one point, well, I don't think we're going to use SB 293 Skinner. Why? I mean, and then they went the whole thing of, well, we're going to do a Melrose this, and we're going to do this, that. And I thought, wait a minute, are you doing all this rigmarole because the A's don't want to pay a property tax? That's the only reason. That's the only reason they would do that. And they need to. And I understand the A's are paying the freight of the city, but that's where the city made a mistake in putting it together. Because if we had established that redevelopment area like that, we would have done what we used to do. We would attach a 20%, 15% administrative cost, and we would have spent that money on admin and then basically build ourselves back the return from the tax increment. We would build it into the bond issue. Or if we didn't want to do it that early, pay as you go. There's some people that say, this is what stands me, I think is really ignorant. We have to wait 10 years for it to grow. You don't. You have to know how to do a calculation so you understand how much money you're working with respect to the rate of growth and assessed value. But you don't need to wait for it. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of. Nobody else does it that way in the United States. Wait for it? So basically, where that came from, I don't know.
I don't either.
Rebecca said that once. I said, Rebecca, no, you have to wait for it. It's called math.
Well, let's hope that we'll be able to identify the council member that wants to step forward. I think
it should be a staff member that drives it, because this is too political.
It could be that, and the new head of economic development could be that person. I'm not sure. I've only met with her once to talk about other things. And, for us in the West Oakland Commerce Association, we're obsessed.
I'd love to be wrong.
Getting rid of the barriers to economic development. So that's as far as I've gotten with her on this level of discussion. But I just think that it would help a lot if somebody who understood the implications of the environmental benefits that would be coming forward from this, particularly in reducing the amount of pollution and so forth that we now have to suffer because of all the congestion in the EIFD area, that would be the driver of how this wonderful project could happen. If we don't have that, then all we've got is squabbling and misdirection. Yep. So let's see how that goes forward.
I think that's a great note to go to bed on.
Thank you, I will.
And tell the missus I said hello.
Okay.
And because it's 12:28 a.m. out here, it's 9:28 out there. Folks, tomorrow's going to be a big day. starts at 9 o'clock Pacific, the meeting, AM, which is 12 noon out here. I have a live stream going in the Zoom. And but then I'll have to break away at 3 o'clock. Actually, before that, because I've got Mayor Schaff at 3 o'clock. So
you do? Oh.
Yeah, 3 o'clock. Yeah.
We say hi to her, and I want my pencils.
It's the first thing I'm going to bring up, Steve.
Okay.
Hey, stick around in the background, Steve. Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for joining us. Remember, subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnowblog.com. That ends this broadcast. Stick around in the background, Steve.